Hey, how's it going guys? Welcome and welcome back, and in this episode we're going to be going through adding a 3-star system. So this is when you finish a level, it'll pop up with a UI, and it'll display the number of stars from 1 to 3, and then you will be able to also then, that's when you'd also, move on to your next level and things like that. So let's just get straight to it. Alright guys, so for this example I'm going to be using the platformer series. It doesn't have to be this you're using, this is just what I'm going to be using for this example. However, this will work for any project that uses levels. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is we need to head over to our viewport here, and we need to actually add the elements for the UI. So what I like to do is, we could add a new object, we'll insert a new layer at the top, and we could just call this complete or level complete, something like that. So we could even just go for, it depends how description want to be, so I'll call it level complete UI. And then what we want to do is, we want to make sure it's at the top of the layers, and then we also want to make sure so it's not initially visible, and then we want to make this a global layer. So this will now add a little globe sign next to it. And what this will do is, so once we've finished adding our elements, so we add our stars and things like that, when we go into level 2, 3, 4, etc., and we add a layer with this name, it will automatically, duplicate that layer, so it's global layer. So it will put all those elements in, so you don't have to keep duplicating the process every time. Also, one final thing we need to check with the layer is we just want to make sure the parallaxing is set to 0 by 0. So it's a UI layer, it's not going to move around with us. Alright, great, so once we've done that, we can start actually adding the elements now. So we're going to add a background, we're going to add the stars, things like that. Alright, so I'm going to insert a sprite. And then for this, I'm just going to make this a background. So this is just going to be a dark colour of some kind. And then we're just going to drag this out and make sure it covers the whole area. And stuff like this, you don't have to copy this, and also you want to make sure it matches the theme of your game. I'm just using this for an example. I'll call this complete. Underscore background, something like that, and then we can lock this in place. So now we've just got a blank canvas to work with. Okay, so on top of the star system as well, this is where it'll be up to you on what else you would like to include on this menu. So for example, at the start of the video, I showed you how I used it in a previous project. So in here, you'd want things like, next level, restart level, all those different options. This is where we're going to put those. So we're going to start adding some objects, and we'll add a bunch of sprites. Alright guys, so in this first sprite, what I've done is I've just gone and taken this example image here. So this is going to be the one we use to go to the next level. We're going to add a frame, and I've just give it the button clicked animation. Again, you don't have to do this, you could use placeholders for now. This is all just visual. Okay, then once again, we just have to name this. So I'm going to start all of these options with just complete, just so I know where everything is. And then I'll just call this next. And so to start off with, I'm just going to fast forward, duplicate this process, and just add all the different elements you want. So for this, I'm going to add a go back to main menu, I'm going to add a replay button, I'm also going to add a border for these to sit on, and then I'll come back and we'll start adding the stars. Alright guys, so I've just added this here, so it just looks a bit more visually appealing, and then what we're going to do is, we're going to now insert the sprites for the stars. Alright guys, so next let's add the sprites for the stars. One thing I will just try and explain is, so there once again there are many ways you can go about, adding a system like this. And depending on how many events you have available, or if you have the paid version, that's going to greatly depend on what you can do. So for this example, I am going to try and show you the better way of doing this by using different sprites for each star. We're going to then add checks, and I'm also going to show you how to do this using a dictionary. However, as I go about doing this, I will explain, simpler methods of how you could do this, or ways you can, achieve this, something similar without using dictionaries and things like that. Alright, so anyways, let's add the stars. So we're going to insert a new object, sprite, and then we're going to put out, so then what you want to do is just get a star image or create one and put that in here. So I'm going to use this star that I added from a different project. And I also want to add an additional frame. So we're going to right click at the bottom, add a frame, and put this at the start. So this will be for when it's not, unlocked. And then we'll change the frame to frame 1 for each star, depending on if you've unlocked it. I'm then going to set the initial frame to 1 so we can see it. And then I'll just call this complete underscore stars, something like that. So we also need to be able to tell which star is which. So we need to add a variable. Right click, instance variable, and we'll just call this star number. And then, so this one we could make this initially 1. And then what we can do is, so we can now duplicate this, so we can hold control and drag this out twice. And then for each of these, just give them a different number, so that's 2, and this is 3. So we have star 1, 2, and 3. And then what you can do is, so now this is up to you where you want to place these, so I'm going to align these to go over these here. Alright guys, so I've just lined these up, and so once you've got something similar to this, we can now head over to our event sheet and we can get this working. Alright guys, so let's add a new group. We'll add a group and we'll just call this level complete or something like that. And then real quick guys, so if you were following the platformer series, or if you have your own events to complete a level, we just need to now add that to that group. So we have here an on collision with portal, and then we're going to make it go to the new layout. So for now, let's just drag this into our level complete. And we're going to refactor this a little bit in a while. So the first thing we need to do is when you trigger these menus is we need to disable all the other layers. So for example, we'll go system, and we want to say set layer interactive. And then for example, so we have the HUD layer, so we can set that. We want to make sure that's not interactive. We also don't want it to be visible. So basically, so once again, we'll say system, visible, set layer visible. We'll say HUD layer, and we don't want this to be visible. And then we also need to duplicate that process with the pause menu. So just do the same thing. So just copy and paste these, and then we can just say, instead we can say pause. And then for this one, same, we can just say pause. Like this. And then inside of here is where you could also add all your visual elements, you know, the portal getting destroyed, or, you know, your player getting pulled into it, things like that. And then what you can do is, so once you've done all that, so you'd have that in between these, and then we could just, so real quick, then we could destroy the portal, so we'll say portal destroy. And then once the portal's been destroyed, that's when we could, you know, actually initialize the, you know, star menu, so the level complete menu. So once again, we can just copy the HUD up here. We can paste this in, so the HUD interactive and invisible. And now inside of here, we can now put the level complete UI. So we can say level complete UI. We do want this to be interactive, and we also want this one to also be visible. So we'll say level again, level complete. I want this visible. And then before we set this to visible, I'm also going to add a function. So right click, add a function. Call this level complete. And then what we can do is, so we can add all our level complete events in here, so it's only triggered by this event. So we can add an action in here, function, level complete, and just drag that below destroy. Alright guys, and then real quick, I'm going to try and now run you through the system I've created. However, it would take too long to go through everything in such detail. You know, for both, you know, paid version and also if you can't. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you this version, and I'm going to just try and run through it all and explain it. So the first thing we needed to define is, you know, what is the condition for getting the stars? So for this, we've got crystals. And then what we could do is, so we could have 3 crystals in each level, for example. And then each crystal can represent 1 star. So you need to have some kind of object. So for example, I've got the crystals in the layers. And then what you want to do is, so we could have, so if you're using a dictionary, right? So I'll show the dictionary. And we can have crystals, and we can also have the crystals balance. Now what this means is we could have one variable for, you know, the crystals that you get per level. And then when you finish a level, we could attach that to a new balance. So every level you could reset crystals to 0. But anyways guys, so I'm just choosing to show you this as well, so you could also pause this and things like that. You know, it's clear to read, and then, you know, you could maybe, you know, flesh out your system more. So this is my crystal system. Alright guys, and this right here is our level complete function, similar to what we added a moment ago. And so then the important thing here, which is, you know, why I'm just showing you like this, because you can't achieve this if you're using the free version. But I'll try to give you, a simple example in a moment. But what you would do is, so you would reference your dictionary. And what you could do is, so you would add keys. And so this here, I've called it level. And then I've added the layout name for everyone. So every level is just called 1, 2, 3, 4, for example. So every time you complete a level, it's going to add a new key called level 1, 2, 3, etc. like that. And then you would set this value to the crystals that you've gotten in the level. And on top of that, you could also add another, so what you could do, so for example, let's say this is, 3 crystals, but then you could also add the, the layout name. And by doing that, by the time you keep playing, you'll keep getting new dictionaries that you could then use for your level complete screen. So inside of here, I have a level complete screen. And then what we've got is, so we have our star system here, which with our different levels. Now, I know this is a lot of information, I'm talking fast, and maybe this is too much to understand. I'm not sure, but I wanted to be able to try and cover some more complex topics, but it would just take way too long to actually go through everything. But either way, even if this is confusing for you guys, you could just pause right here, and you could figure out, and you could just copy this, and you would get a working, star system. One real quick thing I'll add as well is, I'm always active on Discord, and so if you wanted to join the Discord, I'm always happy to help and see your work, so you're more than welcome to join that. Alright guys, so now that's out of the way, we'll go back to, adding the simplified version. And so what we're going to do is, we'll just add a global variable, and we'll just call this crystals, something like that. On the start of layout, we'll set the global variable, and we'll set crystals to 0. So every time we start a new level, we'll set it to 0. And then what we can do is, so we also want to add the crystals, so insert a new sprite. I've added a crystal here like this. We're going to make sure it's on the game layer, and I'll call it crystal. And then for now, I'm just going to paste this out 3 times like this. Doesn't have to be exact. And what we can do is we can add an event, and we can say character on collision with another object with crystal. And then we can add an action, and we can say system add 2, and we can just add 2 the crystals, and we'll add 1. So now every time you interact with a crystal, we'll add 1 to the crystals. And then, so what that means is, so now also, we've also reset it to 0 when we restart the layout. So you can never exceed 3. And so now with this method, we're going to be losing a lot of functionality, but what we could do is we could still visually show, 1, 2, 3 stars. But you're not going to be able to reference that to, add in other things, like, you're not going to be able to save that value. So the issue with that is when you replay a level, you're not going to be able to save that value. The only way you could do that is if you had added a ton of global variables, and you could manually name them all. So let's say you could call one crystals 1, crystals 2, and they could represent each level. And then, so when you complete a level, you could set that value. That is also an option, but I'm not going to be doing that today because it would take a while. Alright, so anyways, what we can do is in our level complete, we can add some blank sub-events. And then we can add a system, compare two values, sorry. And we can just say crystals is greater or equal, and we just say 1. We need to right click, we need to add another condition. We want to say complete star, compare instance variable, and then we say star number is equal to 1. We can delete these two, and then we can just copy this one and paste it twice. And then all we have to do is, so greater or equal then 2. And do the same for each. So this is 2, this is 2. And then lastly, if this one is 3, and this one is 3. And then inside each of these actions, we'd just say complete star. So we'd set frame, and we'll set it to 1. We can paste that in each of these. Alright, great. So now for each of these, depending on your crystals number, you should get the amount of stars. Okay, so real quick, also make sure that you destroy the crystal when you interact with it, of course. Alright, and then real quick, to test this, I need to be able to go to the next layout. So what I'll do is I'll add an event. I'll say touch, on touch. So we'll say on tap object. We'll say complete next. So we'll say complete next. And so when you tap on that, we'll just go to the next layout. System, go to next layout. And then we also want to just double check, so if we're going to our stars, and we want the animation speed to be 0. Otherwise it will automatically go to the first frame. Alright guys, so I'm just previewing this now. I've got 1 crystal there, and as you can see we get 1 star. And if I preview again, but this time if I get 2, as you can see we get 2. Alright, so that's it for this one guys. I know it's a bit all over the place. I was requested to do a star system, and it's really difficult to show that process because a lot of people, they want to use the free version, but a system like this is just very difficult to get fleshed out without, using dictionaries and things like that. So anyways, I hope it helped, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.